We have to introduce ourselves. Hello, my name is Patience. I will be one of the group members interviewing you today.
I'm Mackenzie Bauk, and I will be another group member interviewing you today.
I'm Katie Leeper, and I'll be the monitor for today. Moderator. There you go.
We got it.
I'm Callie, and I'm another group member.
And then Hannah will be coming back in.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to start with some opening questions. If you guys can just elaborate as much as possible. If any questions make you feel uncomfortable, you guys can skip over them. That's just your personal preference.
Just give as much detail as you can and try not to just say one-word answers. Just want to get a feel for what you're thinking.
Oh, also, to elaborate on our topic a little, we are going to be discussing family communication patterns from when you were younger and how they affect you today.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I guess one of you can start, and then you guys can just go down the line. But were you raised in a nuclear family, i.e. two parents with children?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was too.
Okay.
Don't feel too pressured to elaborate too much on these.
Yeah,
These
not-
are just some
These
background.
are just opening questions.
Some of the opening questions you can't exactly elaborate. If you feel comfortable sharing, are your parents together or separated currently?
My parents are together. Mine are together.
Yeah, they're together too.
Okay. How many siblings do each of you have, if any?
I have two. I have one sister.
And I have two sisters and three brothers.
Can you say
Yeah.
where you are in the family, like older, younger, or?
I have an older sister and a younger brother, so I'm the middle child. I have an older sister.
And so I'm fourth in the lineup, so I have, okay, so two older sisters, one older brother, and then two younger brothers. So.
Nice. Did both your parents work during your childhood?
No, only my dad worked. Both of my parents did, and then more recently, just my dad has been.
Okay.
Yeah, so like before I was born, both my parents worked, but now it's only my dad.
So did you guys have a nanny or babysitter during the time you were growing up if your parents both did work during that time?
My parents both didn't work, but I guess there were times when my dad and mom had to go do some stuff, and I would be left with like aunts.
Okay.
Yeah, it was never a nanny, but like if my parents went out for like date night or something, then we had a babysitter.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, same. Like it was only on the needed occasions. It wasn't a regular thing. So.
Okay. So we're gonna move into the parental style rather than opening questions, so it might get a little deeper. So if you guys don't feel comfortable, just let us know. So were your parents more strict or lenient with you as a child?
My parents were definitely more strict. They weren't strict in like they would hit us really hard or stuff, or like we weren't allowed to do things, but we knew that there were things that were off limits. And I think in general, all three of us were pretty like standard, regular children, so we never like ever had to see the really strict side.
Nice.
But in general, they were like on the stricter side.
So there was like a lot of discipline there,
Yeah, but not like.
but not too much.
Yeah. I would say my parents leaned more towards the stricter side, but they always just like raised us to do the right thing. So my sister and I like never really dealt with like timeout or anything like that, if that makes sense. But like if we did do something wrong, like there were like consequences for it. So they like implemented that into their parenting style, but they were like pretty strict, like but not really strict, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think for me, like, there was discipline definitely, like, growing up in the house. I think that, like, it would either result in, like, not being able to, like, do a certain thing that you really wanted to do, or, like, we had, like, an allowance sort of structure, and it was, like, if you do something that's, like, not considered right, then your allowance is taken away, and so, in that way, they were, like, disciplined, but it wasn't really, like, it didn't feel like this is a strict household, like, I didn't have a curfew, like, I didn't, yeah, so I wasn't, like, always monitored, I guess. So, yeah, I don't really know how to define that on, like, the strictness scale.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? So she like gave an example of not having a curfew. When you guys say that you had strict parents, were those like factors that your parents, so like curfews and like going out or being
Yeah, I never had a curfew or
Okay.
anything like
I mean,
that.
they never said there was a curfew, but I knew that they didn't like us out when it was dark.
Okay.
Like, yeah, we didn't have like a bedtime. Like, I used to give myself bedtimes, but I knew that our parents wouldn't want us at someone's house like after 7 or something,
Okay.
because it would get dark.
Okay.
I also have a follow-up. Did you ever feel like there was one parent that you could talk to more about, like, oh, I want to go out tonight, I should definitely ask my dad, or something like that?
Well, I personally, like, growing up never went out or like had a desire to go out. Like if I went to a friend's house to like hang out or whatever, then that was fine. I would always ask my mom first, just because, I don't know, I feel like she's the one, like she's the planner, so I should like tell her. But in terms of like going out in the sense of like going to a party or something like that never really occurred for me, so if that makes sense.
So you guys also feel that way? Going to your mom was easier?
Yeah.
I think so. In a way, though, it was like my dad would be like, "Oh yeah, like go out and have fun." Or not in like the going out sense, but like I think I would just always go to my mom and be like, "Hey mom, what's going on? Can I go do this thing?" And she'd be like, "Yes or no." So yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's fun.
It wasn't really like mom or dad was more strict in this case, because I think that our mom was more responsible, because I'm pretty sure if I asked my dad, he would say like, yeah, sure, of course. But I still went to my mom just because I knew it would like, she would want to know first.
As you said, like you guys are each in a different kind of position with your siblings. Do you think that your sibling dynamic, either being the oldest, youngest, middle, affected how strict or lenient your parents were as you grew up?
Yeah.
For me, like there only being 2 of us, I definitely think that with regards to me, I got away with a lot more, which like is sad for my sister. It was like she was sort of the guinea pig, so like if she ever did anything, like I would see it and I'd be like, oh, like I can either not do that and like not follow in her footsteps, or if I do it, like maybe I won't get the harsher punishment. I don't know. It was just like because I was the baby, and I just don't think that it was like the same for her as it was for me.
Yeah, I think that being the middle child, my sister got all of the responsibilities, and like you said, she was the guinea pig, so she definitely had the harder time as a child growing up. I think it shaped her in some weird way. And my brother, being the only boy and also the youngest, probably gets away with a lot more. Like my parents like make us take care of him, but me in general, they were really not attentive to me until very recently. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say definitely, because like once you get to 3 kids, like to the 4th kid, it's like, okay, whatever, you know? Like that's how I kind of felt with my parents, because I definitely feel like my oldest sister like was put through a lot of the responsibilities and like kind of like paving the way for the rest of the siblings, and so as each child kind of came along, it was like less strict, like more lenient and stuff. It's just in like little things, like what movies you're allowed to watch and like what games you're allowed to play and like so stuff like that. It wasn't like huge, but yeah. So as the 4th child, I guess kind of like relate with like the middle child thing of being like, this is the youngest, this is the oldest, and we're like, I don't know. You have this kind of a sense of like, I'm in the middle. Where am I? I don't really have like a strict position as either like the baby or the pathfinder. So yeah, definitely.
So I have a follow-up question. Going off of what you said, how your parents are more attentive now than they were when you were younger, so do you feel as if like they've gotten more strict with you as you've gotten older, or? Yeah, okay.
I think it's because I used to bask in my sister's like shadow, so anything she would do, it would just be on her. If I did something, it would be on both of us for some weird reason. They like attached us together because 2 sisters, one younger than the other, I don't know. So nothing was ever really my fault, and I could get away with so much more because they would be paying attention to my sister or my little brother. And now that my sister's, she's only a year older than me, but now that she's like barely in the house anymore, or like she doesn't really communicate with my parents as much unless it's about family gossip, which we're all allowed to partake in now. My mom pays more attention to me than she used to, and because of that, she's suddenly more strict. Or maybe she was always like this with my sister and brother, but I just never experienced it until now.
So we'll move into the education portion of this interview. What was the highest degree each of your parents earned?
My dad he's like working on a PhD right now, but he has 2 masters and then like bachelor's and everything. My mom has a bachelor's from Bangladesh, so nothing here, but it's like a bachelor's in that country.
My dad graduated with a bachelor's, and then my mom technically like sort of has an associate's degree, but she had to leave college after her first 2 years to help with like her family's finances, so she didn't finish college.
And yeah, both my parents have bachelor's degrees, actually from tech. So,
Followed in their footsteps. So did your parents read to you as a child, as in little storybooks before bed, or novels once you got to the age you were older?
No. My dad did a lot of stuff where he would tell ghost stories by himself from his real experiences to my sister and me, and that's basically what happened every night for a while, but we never got like read to.
Not that I can recall. I mean, I definitely remember like reading books as a child, but not like them being read to me, if that makes sense. Like my parents would always suggest me reading like little kid books just to like help with growth of knowledge and whatnot, but it wasn't like a bedtime ritual or anything like that.
Yeah, for me it was all the time. Yeah, it happened so much, and it was interesting because like I was homeschooled basically all throughout my life, with the exception of like doing classes and co-ops like in high school and like dorm classes. But yeah, so like growing up when my mom was like the primary sort of educator in the house, one thing for one of our classes that would happen would be like a history course, but it would teach history like through literature. So she would read us book after book after book, and so yeah, it was something that like me and my brother did alongside each other. But yeah, so growing up when I was younger, it was like bedtime stories and like Goodnight Moon and all those things. But yeah, so like elementary school, early middle school, it was a lot of like reading just books to us. And my older sister actually read books to us as well, so it was kind of like a family thing.
Oh, wow. So do you think that affected the way like you looked at novels or reading as you got older, like now? Do you
Yeah.
continually read?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, I mean, I read less now just because of constantly having to read for classes and stuff,
Right.
but it's definitely like imprinted upon me that like reading is a way to gain knowledge and to like just kind of like sharpen your mental like processes, I guess. What are all those like studies of like, millionaires like read a book like every week or something? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so reading is something that's definitely like super important to me, and I really value it as a source of like just kind of sharpening your mind.
I feel like sorry.
Oh, go.
Okay. I don't think it affected me at all. Like I was still a huge bookworm, and I still read a lot, even like up until now. Where like I spend tons of money at Barnes and Noble, and I get only through like a few of them. But I think it's because what hit me when I was young, even though it wasn't like reading from my parents, was like the Harry Potter thing, and because of the Harry Potter, like the mainstreamness of it, or it getting to where I was at. When I was at a young age, it was like 4th grade or something, right?
Right.
Because it got big then, like with everyone, that's what kindled the reading for like ever.
That makes sense.
I would say it's actually interesting because my dad is like an avid reader. Like he will read literally anything. He'll go into Barnes and Noble and like read an entire book and then not buy it. So, but like for me, I hate reading. Like especially if it's a novel of some sort. If I do read it, it's like because I have to for a class, or if it's like something that somebody's recommended to me and they're like, you would really like this book, then I'll read it. But I'm not one to just like go pick up a book and start reading it. So I don't know per se like if my upbringing with like my parents not like reading me bedtime stories had an effect on me not wanting to read, but I don't know. It's just never like been an interest of mine.
I wanted to ask one thing. Both of you said that you didn't get so much reading from your parents when you were much younger, but I'm assuming you both know how to read now.
No, we're illiterate.
I think a lot of times we associate reading as like a source of knowledge or information. Today, what would you say is the way that you learn more about other experiences or just new information?
Well, it depends. Like, do you mean like current events? Do you mean like knowledge, like for school?
I'd say not so much current events, but more just like I think reading is kind of like looking into another person's experience.
Yeah,
So do you feel like you get that at all? And if, where would it be from?
I think I learn more from like interactions, like day-to-day interactions with people. And like being a communications major, it's like showed me how to better communicate with people depending on like who they are and what they believe and what the conversation topic is on. So I wouldn't say that like I get it from reading a textbook and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go apply that to like my everyday life. It's just sort of how I end up going about things, and I'll like learn from a mistake I make, or like something, if I do it right, then like it'll just push me to grow. So
I was definitely more introverted up until recently. Like, I just didn't talk to anyone. So I think that reading was a big source of how I learned about a lot of stuff and like remembered knowledge, gained stuff. I was also on like the high school quiz bowl team, and like if you didn't read the material, then you weren't gonna know anything. So I think that I put a different value on reading just because it's reading, and maybe like movies are where I learned how to like how different people have different like how people have different experiences in their life. Yeah.
Alright, moving on to social behavior. Would you describe your relationship with your parents at a young age as communicative, i.e. constructive, awarding, or demeaning? Whichever description.
I don't really know if they had a parent type because we weren't really disciplined, but I think that we associated them with strictness because of the stereotype that brown parents are strict. So these days when I think about my childhood, I'm like, maybe they weren't strict, but I felt like they were when I was a kid. I think that in terms of communication with parents, I never really went to my parents for anything, so I don't know if they're constructive or communicative or anything.
I would say that like in my childhood stages, it was very much so like supportive and communicative. I mean, my sister and I always, like, even now, feel extremely comfortable telling my parents anything. We just have, like, a very strong, close family dynamic, and I think that that's, like, they just raised us in a household where we felt comfortable coming and telling them anything without fear of, like, judgment or harsh consequences or anything like that. But, like, communicating, if we did do something wrong, then, like, here's why you shouldn't do that, and here's what you should do next time. So it was very constructive, I would say, in that sense, and just like a supportive household.
Yeah, for me, I think it was interesting because with being such a large family, it almost like felt like you had to like have your time with unlimited, you know? So it's like, oh no, like okay, here's my time, and then I don't know, you kind of like there's so many people that are like wanting their attention in. I guess that's the way to describe it. But yeah, so in that way, because I was a very like introverted child, and like I don't know, I kind of just kept to myself a lot of the times, and so I felt like for me, I didn't really foster a lot of that like sort of relationship, but it was also like a two-way thing. So I don't know, I would say that like because my parents were, I don't know, I felt like they did do a lot of intentional like pouring into us, but at the same time it felt like it didn't foster like right now I would say that I don't have like a super close relationship with them. So I guess like yeah, I don't really know how to describe it, but I think there's a little bit less than I think what you would describe as like your experience with your parents, and so that's kind of resulted in like just like less frequent, less open communication now, but I still feel very comfortable around them. So I don't understand.
What follow-up question? You guys would mostly like seem to have like a pretty like open communication with your parents, like for the most part. Was there any times that you kind of felt like there was like passive aggression going on from either side, you or them, or like shutting them out or them shutting you out? And if so, like, have you noticed yourself repeating those behaviors, like, now, like when you talk to people or anything, or if there wasn't any of that?
Okay, I think that there was a lot of passive aggression from, I think around 8th grade up until, I think from 8th grade to junior year of high school. Just because we moved that year, like middle of my 8th grade, and I was really mad at them for that. And then it just kind of broke the family apart in a weird way. And then you enter like high school and you're kind of like attitudinal and stuff like that. And I think that it sort of went away junior and senior year when they started focusing on my sister more again than all three of us because of the move. And it's coming back a little more now, just because my sister's like out of the picture and it's like back on me.
I don't think that there was like really ever any passive aggressiveness on either end for me or my parents, at least that I can recall.
Yeah, for me, I don't think there was obvious passive aggressiveness because it would always, if there was like conflict or something, we would talk about it. Or like my mom would frequently like make it known because we're like a family that has dinner together. You know, that's like our thing. We eat meals together, so we would talk about things that would happen like during that. And so I didn't really feel like I experienced a lot of it. Yeah, at least from what I can recall as well.
So do you kind of feel like in your life now that you're very like open with people, like when there is a conflict or anything, or do you tend to like bring it up like y'all's parents do, or are you kind of more reserved about it and just like let it happen?
I wouldn't say that I'm like confrontational, but I'm not one to like be around the bush. And like if there is a conflict that I have with somebody, it might take me like a day or two to get there because I want to process like how I'm going to approach it with that person. But I think that like growing up in the household that I did, I just learned how to like appropriately discuss conflict with somebody who I was having trouble with. But it's interesting because like my sister is somebody who hates confrontation and would rather like somebody bring it to her than her bring it up. And I think that also just has a lot to do with like our personalities because I would say I'm more outgoing than she is. And so maybe that's it, just like kind of taking on characteristics of each of our parents, but I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that like it's weird now because I'm like a total conflict avoider. Like I do not like this at all. And so in that way it's honestly been kind of like a detriment to like my close relationships, I think. Because it's like something that I really try to avoid. And yeah, so I don't really know. I guess that's more my personality, just being like wanting to be more reserved and really wanting to like not hurt another person and really just kind of like be gracious with people. I don't know. But yeah. So.
I wouldn't say that I'm confrontational either, but I feel like when there's a conflict between me and a friend, I definitely I take the initiative to try to alleviate it before it gets out of hand. Like try to fix the situation in our relationship before we bring it up or before we feel like it's getting us to somewhere else.
I kind of want to give you guys a situation, and if it resonates with you, can you talk about it in any way? So like if you were much younger, like elementary school age, and you won an award for something, would you feel like you'd get a comment from your parents like, good job, but get it again next year so they know it wasn't a mistake? Or would you feel like you'd get more of a, just congratulations, that's great, good job on doing it this time?
I definitely get the second one. Like my parents were really happy when I won like the most mediocre award. Like those participation awards that everyone got, they'd be really happy about those.
I would say the same for me, yeah.
Yeah, for me it would be like, wow, I'm like so proud of you and I can tell that you worked really hard. And yeah, there wasn't like, you have to do this again.
And today, do you feel like you can appreciate victories, even if they're little, because of the way that your parents congratulated you when you were younger?
Well, I feel like some of the victories have changed now, right? So like when you get a scholarship for $1,000, it's like, is is that really like a victory? I still have like $6,000 left to pay. So I think it depends on the. No, I think that I don't think I'm that into small victories. They have to be big and impactful for me to be like, yes, finally.
I don't know. I would say that like anything big or small is like a victory for me or like for my parents. I mean, they would be proud no matter what, but yeah.
Katie, you want to go on to the next
Yes.
one?
So, this next topic, going off of you guys having open relationships with your parents, were you guys open about your sexual experiences with your parents, like talking about sex, having that conversation, or understanding, let's like boys or alcohol or anything like that?
Okay, so it's really weird, right? Because my sister is 20, and my mom has started the whole marriage thing on her already. But, so I don't think either of us, we don't actually like have sexual experiences just because like we're Muslim and we don't do that. But if in the case that we had them, or if we would, I don't think we would come up to them about it. Like that's like an off limits. Same with like alcohol, drugs, stuff. Like, I mean, they know I've been to parties where like alcohol was around, but I didn't drink, and if I drank, I wouldn't probably tell them.
I would say with regards to alcohol, my parents were very lenient about it. They always kind of raised my sister and I to be like, okay, before you go off to college, we want you guys to like experience it and know what your limitations are, just in case like when you do get there, if you want to go out, you know like what you can and can't handle. So with regards to that, they were very open and like trusting with us, and I find it interesting because like I really don't drink at all, mainly just because I don't like the taste of it, and so I feel like almost their leniency towards it like made me feel less of a need to do it, instead of like strict parents saying like don't go out, don't drink, which I feel like would make somebody like rebel against that. It's been the total opposite for me. And then with regards to like sexual topics and stuff like that, they like my sister and I were raised in like a Christian household, so for us like we both plan on waiting until marriage, and that was never like really brought on like by our parents, because they like made it clear to us that that wasn't the route that they took when they were younger, but they were just sort of like, I don't know, it was sort of a personal choice that like both she and I made, which is kind of interesting, but I think that like they've always been so open and so understanding that even though like nothing of the situations have occurred for like either my sister or I, if it did, then I think that I would feel most comfortable going to my mom probably to talk about it, more so than my dad, which I think is probably understandable among most girls.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, if something like ever did happen, I would still feel comfortable telling them about it.
Yeah, I was also raised in a Christian household, and so we had that sort of understanding of like, yeah, waiting till marriage is like the thing to do regarding like sexual experiences. But yeah, so it was something that like my parents like they wanted to like tell me about things when I could understand them, you know. So it happened like kind of later as compared to some other people, is like understanding what sex is and everything. And so like coming at it from that point of view, I'd say that like because I could understand it when they told me, like it helps me sort of understand like the things that they would tell me about it, and like I'm trying to think of how to explain it. But yeah, so I think like yeah, if anything like did happen.
Oh, are you guys working here?
Yeah.
We have like office hours, but it's like 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
We're like doing a focus.
Don't worry.
Can you
I'll
wait
wait.
outside while you're doing
Can
this?
you wait up?
Yeah, I'm
We're
just
until noon.
gonna do my bad. Sorry.
Sorry guys.
No, you're good. But yeah, so I think that I forgot where it was.
That's okay.
That's
okay. Sorry about
No,
that.
no, it's okay, it's okay. Yeah. So anyway,
That was super rude. Okay.
it's okay. But yeah, so I think that like I didn't grow up like telling my parents like I have a crush on this person and like I don't want to date this person. So in that way, like my communication about that was more limited. And so I think that I didn't really like, it was like a subject that wasn't really talked about as much, like as a family, but one-on-one it was talked about. And so yeah, but if something did happen, like I would probably go to my mom as well. And regarding like alcohol or anything, like yeah, I'm not really like into taste as well, and so like they just wanted to make sure, I don't know, it was something that was like I saw the way that they handled alcohol, and they were like, you know, like it's okay, but make sure that like you don't go overboard. And so I think that mainly like I learned by their example sort of thing. That's anything. So yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Mine's still going.
I have a follow-up, like a short one. So you two kind of seem like if the situation like did arise, you would be able to go talk to your parents and have them be understanding, but you kind of said that you probably wouldn't go to them about something like that. Is that because you'd be afraid of like possible consequences or like disappointing them in any way, or is it just not something that you would generally talk about because you don't have that type of relationship?
It's just not something that I would ever talk about. Like, and the off chance that I get pregnant from it happening, I'd probably have to tell them. But if I ever did stuff like that, like even like having like a secret boyfriend, I probably wouldn't tell them about it. And it's not because I'm afraid of consequences, but it's mainly the disappointing thing. Because I mean, once it's happened, what are they gonna do about it? And I think my dad and mom are different in how they would react. Like my mom would be very upset about it. She'd be like, "You're destroying the family lineage," or whatever. I don't know. But my dad, he would be like, "That was not cool," and that's it. But I know that it would like hurt him internally.
So, how would you characterize your parents' relationship that you observed at a young age, and did that affect your relationships or how you will handle relationships when you have them in the future? Like, were they loving, affectionate, neutral, unaffectionate?
And we're talking observe like elementary school.
Yeah,
age,
like yeah.
My parents were really affectionate. Like they really wanted us to make sure that we were doing well in school and that we didn't have like friend issues. Like it was in that my sister, brother, and we didn't really have issues in general, so they didn't really have to come in a lot. But our mom did she always wanted to make sure we were eating. She still does that now. She's always asking if we're eating, and she's really affectionate overall. And my dad wants to make it known that he really loves us, but he's the worker, so he's barely there, and my mom is like there more. But he just wants to, he's always trying to find ways to let us know that he does like really love us too, so.
Sorry, we just want to clarify a little. When we say relationship, we meant to say like the relationship between your parents. So were they affectionate with each other in front of you, or you know, like were they always holding hands? What were something you observed?
They never did like the touchy stuff, but they they would, because they would joke about it. So when my dad was leaving, he would like kiss my mom before she said bye, and she'd be like, "Stop it," you know? Like they would do that sometimes, but they weren't ever like hugging. But we know they love each other because that's just not what is done in our culture, and there are different ways that they show love that's in our culture that they do. So we know that they're really affectionate towards each other too. And if that affects me in my future, I feel like I'm gonna be really affectionate to whoever I end up with, so maybe it did affect me.
I would say my parents were like very affectionate with each other. I mean, I don't really remember like elementary school years, anything like sticking out, but I know that they like made it a thing to go on like date nights every few weeks or something. Because I remember like having a babysitter and then going out to dinner, and they would always go to like Christmas parties with each other. They're always holding hands, stuff like that. And I think that they really like set a good example of like a strong Christian love for my sister and I. And I think it's definitely had an impact on like my relationship right now with my boyfriend, for sure. And I always feel like I can go to either one of them with advice that I need. Like, how did you guys handle it when y'all were like in your mid-20s and first started dating, stuff like that. So I definitely think that like how they portrayed their relationship for my sister and I has had a positive impact on my relationship now, and hopefully for my sister too.
Yeah, I think that it was kind of interesting with me observing my parents because they really weren't that affectionate, like, just obviously when they were in public or like kind of in front of other people. So I mean, yes, they did like do displays of affection like in the home and stuff, but it just wasn't as frequent. And so I think that has, honestly, I've been seeing like ways that that's kind of played out in the relationship that I'm currently in, because I tend to be like what is okay, like within like a public setting, like what is like PDA is like bad or something. So yeah, I think that it's been kind of interesting to like see their example, because they obviously like love each other so much, but at the same time it's not always like visibly obvious, and so I think that translating that onto like my current relationship, I mean obviously it's different because I'm just like beginning to date this person versus they've been married for like years and years and years, so yeah, I think that I'm a little less obviously affectionate, I guess, but there's still a lot there, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any comments you would like to make about the topics we discussed if we had posed them in relation to a different age range? I think we talked a lot about, you know, the elementary school years versus the growing up, and then especially now. Is there anything you would like to add about your relationship with your parents or anything like that?
I think I made it sound like my parents and I were like standoffish towards each other, but that's like not the case. We just don't talk about really personal stuff together, which I don't think is bad, because as long as I'm comfortable with myself, then I don't really mind it. I'm comfortable with them, and we do have a relationship in which like we send memes to each other, and they're starting to learn like this normal like trendy stuff. So we do have, it's more like a friendship now.
Okay.
I definitely think that like my relationship with my parents is very much like a friendship too, and that's, I think, as I've gotten older, and as like I've gone off to college, because I'm a very like homebody person and never like went to away camp or anything like that. I always just like to be like in the comfort of my home and around my parents and stuff. But like more so, I've always grown up like very independent, and so I don't really think that like that has anything to do with it. But I do think that like I just feel like my mom and my dad are like two of my best friends, even though they're still my parents, and they're like, we're gonna be your parents, like we're not your friends in that like funny sense, but like I just think that like they're very close friends of mine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's like interesting to see how my parents interact with like different kids, I think, because like with let's see, three out of 6, no, it's kind of interesting, it's a weird situation, like 4-ish kids out of 6 out of the home right now. Like I think that like locational distance has caused like more like less frequency in communication, which I find kind of sad. But yeah, I'd say that like in a way, it's so hard to describe. It's like one of those friends where it's like you go and you're like not together for a while, but you come back and you're like just how you were, you know, before you left. So I think that's how I would describe it, but it's not like there's like a cold, I feel like I'm describing it, it's like, oh yeah, like we talk less and it's really sad, but it's not like a cold relationship in that sense, I guess. So yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay.
One more question going off of what you said. You both talked about something about location-based or something. Where are your parents living in relation to here as of now? And does that affect your relationship? Do you guys FaceTime often, call often? Do you visit often?
I commute because my parents live in Blacksburg.
Okay.
And my dad's not here right now, he's working in Florida, but my mom is at home. And I feel like that really affects our relationship in like the negative way. Because this is what I mean, like my sister's barely at home now, even though she technically like still lives there, but she's not at home. And I was not at home my freshman year, like ever. But this year, just because I have classes in weird times, I feel like I can come home and then go back. but I'm trying to do that less now because I've realized that once I'm at home, she's not gonna stop bugging me. She doesn't have my dad there. She doesn't have my sister there. My brother's at like high school, so I'm just there, and she's not gonna leave me alone. And it's starting to like, I understand like the whole absence makes the heart grow fonder thing. So I know that if I was like not at home, I wouldn't be having this situation with my mom. But because I am with her, it's nice at night when she's like, here, eat this dinner now. Thanks, Mom, but during the day, it's rough.
My parents live in Northern Virginia, so they're like 4 hours from here, but they have season tickets to the football games, so since my sister and I are both here, they come like for the home games and stuff and tailgate and see us. But when they're not here, I talk to either my mom or dad every other day or every day. And we have like a family group chat too, so like we'll update them on things and vice versa. So it's like constant communication, I would say, with them, even though like location wise we're distant.
Yeah, I've like visited a couple or like twice. No. Anyway, yeah. So my parents live in Northern Virginia, and so it's like 3.5 hours, 4 hours away. And yeah, we also have like a family group chat, so like the updates are still there, but at the same time, like I feel like there's not like the, you know, when you're at home, it's just like, oh, how was your day? What did you do today? But now it's just like when bigger things happen, it's like, oh yeah, I like became a part of this club or something, or did that. So that way it's like less frequent. But yeah, they're coming. So there's like visiting, I guess, but it's just, it feels like there's just an overall like less, like there's just less frequency than, for example, in high school, obviously. Yeah.
And also, can you guys just say your names one more time so we have it on video?
I'm Tareem.
I'm Brooke.
I'm Sarah.
Thank you so much for all your help today. You guys
Thanks,
really
guys.
open and awesome.